Everyone should get their marker. Hello and welcome back. I hope you're okay with us recording your learning so we can learn from it. Hello. So hi, maybe just as a starting question before I hand you over to Daniel, how was that? How was 30 minutes? Is it just way too long? It's quite long.
I think it was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, got to talk about all kinds of different topics, and yeah.
Okay, good. Just want to check for the next session. Maybe we make it a little bit shorter. So Daniel, do you want to take the lead? Where are you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can
Well,
I just
let me
check
ask
on-
a few.
Are we
Okay.
going to have a body break, or what's the plan?
Yeah, do you want to pop? Maybe people can go now.
I'm all right with that. We can give people, say, 5 or 10 minutes body break. I'm okay. I don't know how long you normally do it, Julia. Or
We
whether
just
people
normally go
slip
through.
away.
We normally go through, but we're happy to work with it in any way that makes it more comfortable for everyone.
All right, so maybe then let's take a body break for 5 minutes. But don't lock out. Don't just put your.
They say their needs are. Like the country, the continent you live on, because we kind of, as we started the conversation, we were not paying attention to the larger system. So we found ourselves in nice little coherence of the needs and wants our clients wanted. Approximately, was struggling approximately with the same things, and then I said, how about bringing forward a larger perspective? And this is where a lot of new discoveries, at least I've made a lot of discovery. Thank you.
Okay. And what is there anything that you can share with us around this larger context and what you discovered around that?
Well, like South Africans, if I listen to you ladies, then the impression is that it has never been a very ordered country. There has always been a country filled with diversity. So every step you make, you're exposed to diversity. So diversity is all around, and it makes you kind of resilient in a special way. So you're anticipating a diversity, and that's a part of your DNA. All other things might be similar, but this provides a backdrop to certain needs. And we also had Finland, which had been isolated for a very long time, relatively speaking, and is now maybe awaking to a possible diversity. And what does it do to us? And I also certainly couldn't but mention Ukraine and Russia in the context of the war, that what it does to our needs today that it didn't yesterday. So business.
All right, Jonathan, I see you've had your hand up. Do you want to build on that, or is there something else you would like to say or share?
Both. So in terms of diversity, one of the things we talked about was how diversity may not be, DEI may not be the presenting issue, but as coaches, it's something we can pay attention to and listen for and bring into the conversation when appropriate. And then in addition, we talked about, I think you framed it as, internally and externally from the outer world, but there's also in between what's going on in the organization. And when we're working with individuals or teams, what is happening in the broader organization that might be impacting what's showing up in the coaching, and what lenses do we use for that?
Can I pop in a question here? just I was really interested in our discussion around the mood. And I wondered if either Jonathan or Anna could comment on the moods coming in. Or I'm thinking in the Heideggerian way, but only I would think that way. But like the feel, what's the feel?
Did you mean this Jonathan or that Jonathan?
Yeah, you. No, you, simply.
So the mood or feel. And do you mean of the coach or the coachee or both or either?
Yeah.
Anything. I mean, I think it's, I don't know if this fits into that, but I think curiosity is so important. And it's certainly something I tried to bring in, because we don't know other people's worlds, and it's really risky to make too many assumptions without checking them. So certainly that's one piece, and maybe especially with DEI and as a white person, just trying to be curious about what's going on in the system and in the person or people I'm working with. So that's at least one thing.
Okay.
Julia, do you want Anna to build on that, or do you want to move on?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm curious about the sort of the mood of clients. Are they upbeat? Are they despondent? Are they looking forward to next year? Do they feel capable? Do they not feel capable?
I can say something to that. I mean, for my client, I definitely feel a lot of overwhelm is, I think, the main and the kind of the disturbance that gives internally. And as a consequence, kind of being pulled into all the directions that as leaders they need to attend to, and don't finding enough time to recenter in themselves, or having a good practice around that. I work somatically, so my viewing of it is based through that lens, but that's definitely a very common theme: overwhelm and a lack of aligning with inner purpose.
Burnout.
I'm curious, that coaching, does it happen in an organizational context or perhaps more in the context of life coaching?
No, it's leadership coaching. So I'm a somatic coach and a leadership coach,
Right.
and so coaching nonprofit CEOs. I mean, the context is one-on-one that I do. I also work with groups, by the way, but those are separate programs. But this, I'm talking about leaders, talking about their professional development, which of course very aligns with their personal development, but yeah, it is organizational. Yeah.
Nothemba, I see you dropped a note there around the busyness and being overwhelmed. Something that you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I just want to echo the overwhelm part, because that's the bit that came out in our group, whether we called it busyness or overwhelm or overcommitment, or just feeling like it's too much. There's just not enough time to juggle everything. And I think it was also mentioned that it was also a feeling of being anxious about everything, especially from a relationship point of view. Yeah.
Nothemba, if I may, in your own coaching, what kind of topics do you find or what kind of topics did you find quite a lot of this year? If we just look at your South African coaching experience over the past year.
I mean, I didn't share this with the group, but the spiritual sort of inquiry has been quite different for me. And I sort of touched on it with the group in that people are becoming awake to something different. And what I am experiencing is there's a spiritual connectedness that people are inquiring into, and not even the more traditional way. People are wanting to find almost their African spiritual sort of truth, which is different for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jonathan, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed, Sarah Ann, you posted something there about needing new ways to look at and language themselves within their context. And I thought that resonated with me just in terms of how my answer to that is, it depends, because I see the curiosity about how unique and how differently people fit with or respond to changes in their context. And so could you say more about what you mean by new ways to language themselves?
So I'm a psychologist rather than a coach. So I work in a private practice. But what I feel when people come with a presenting problem, because I would agree that it's not always the problem, they come with a frame and a language around how they've constructed that. And I would agree with what everyone's saying is people are properly overwhelmed. But the overwhelm stays if they keep languaging the problem and themselves and understanding themselves and the context in that same way. So I'd find, and perhaps Nontemba's onto something in terms of pulling people into a place where they hold themselves within a bigger, perhaps spiritual, if that's real for them, context, and in that way seeing themselves differently. So being able to, whether it's quiet and an inner critic, whether it's to go, oh, someone else doesn't expect that of me, it's what I'm expecting of me. It's shifting how someone sees themselves and defines their life, their relationship, their workspace. So yeah, I feel like I take a little bit of time, and then it's coming up with new ways of languaging that. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, but I totally agree, because I think it's reframing, it's reconceptualizing, it's to me, it's a developmental thing. The pressures of the world provide the challenge that drive us to need to find conceptions that anchor us in something bigger than ourselves, so that we feel that we're held in some way.
Yeah, and to quiet some of the anxiety and fear and shame that are driving the narratives that they've constructed.
Nice.
Sam.
So I wanted to agree with Sarah about the language thing, because I think that's critically important, and part of it is I think there's a ongoing, it's almost like a hidden transcript background, which is part of it is managerialism as an ideology, and not paying attention to what that means in organizations. The other aspect is, I think systems thinking constrains how we might think about what we're doing together as human beings, because we talk about sort of this imaginary system. Citibank is a system, and the American government's a system. We're not asking the question is, who is actually functionalizing all of this? It's a bunch of human beings patterning together that are actually functionalizing the behaviors in these different groups that we call organizations. And I work with clients on really working at one is changing their language, but also reflecting on all the paradoxes that are constantly present when you bring a group of people together. And what are those paradoxes and how can they continue to function in them? So yes, Sarah, Sarah Ann, I think you have a very valid point around language, because the language inordinately unthought about constrains us. So I just wanted to agree with you and say, thumbs up, keep on doing that.
Sam, I would love to just say that I just feel what you have said is so very profound, and for me kind of summarizes what's wrong with OD in the world at the moment, and how we're just using another cognitive trend to avoid humanizing the work. So thank you.
And I don't think that there's a right or a wrong here. It's rather, how do we actually pay attention to it? So the moment we go, so we make a lot of binary choices in organizations. It's right, it's wrong, it's healthy, unhealthy. Is there a way to just actually pay attention to what we're doing together and trying to make sense of what we're doing together and how we're doing it, when we're doing it? And I think really that's the work, at least that I work with my clients to try and do. So.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Anyone else sitting?
I could say how that speaks to me, appreciating that those two last contributors to, developing the embodied self-awareness. I mean, both spirituality and the concept of a bigger connectiveness doesn't go outside the body. It's not out there. It's through us that we can feel deeper connected and develop deeper layers of consciousness, right? Dropping in deeper into ourselves and aligning with what's important to us. Connecting to self really is the first step before we can connect to others deeply. So just want to offer that as language. It doesn't have to be verbally, right? There's always also a languaging in sensing and being present to, and knowing your history of shaping how you got to this place in a systemic way. So just wanted to propose that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how much time do we still have, Julia, before the second exercise?
Well, we've got 45 minutes till the end, and I think we'll do the second breakout room for 20 minutes, which is really about what do we need to do to be functional in some way in this current system. I feel like there's more to be learned here. I like the idea of that there's somehow this overwhelm is turning people to different ways of being. And I'm interested in all the comments about how people are just trying to run faster. And I'm also curious about, like, what do you do with coaching clients who want to run faster? Do you help them run faster? What do you do? Simon.
Gonna tell us.
Well, I'm not sure I am, and it might be a bit left field, this one, but so I spent some time recently researching shopping addiction, some of you may know, and so that took me into kind of literature around neoliberalism, and there's something about varying manifestations of an addiction to neoliberalism that comes up in pretty much all of my work. And it's something about that thing you just said, Jonathan, around people anchor themselves to something bigger. But what we're anchoring ourselves to, and this is not a capitalism bashing session, although I can certainly do that, but what we're anchoring ourselves to is a neoliberal paradigm that is bringing up untold symptoms, issues, malaise, capitalist life syndrome, loss of meaning, high anxiety, high stress, and a lack of freedom. And I think if I think about across all of my coaching clients, certainly in the corporate world, there is some kind of iteration of an addiction to neoliberalism that needs working with. And we don't know that we're addicted to it. And as coaches, we don't know we're addicted to it either, because we're charging for our services pretty handsomely too. So I don't know what that means, but it is something that seems to sit as a foundation of some kind of presenting problem. And often it's not the presenting problem either, around the dominant system that we all live in.
I would like to make a transition to the next breakout framing from what you said, Simon. And this leads to a couple of other comments I'd like to weave in, because I think that we're looking for, so I've read Keegan's The Evolving Self finally after 25 years. I read it. I read everything else but that. But I have a much more profound sense of how we are always in relationship with our context and environment to be held in some way. And if we're undiscerning about that, then we can be held by whatever's trying to hook our emotions in some way, or hook us unconsciously into mass habits and so on. But when the topic of spirituality was brought up, I thought, well, is this an attempt to be more discerning and to say, how do we hook into something beyond ourselves that has a more, say, stable anchor, without going into more of it? And the question that I think, Julia, you had proposed to discuss in the second breakout is, how do these two forces, so to speak, relate to our own sense of survival, and on the other end of the spectrum, thrival? You know, what really enables us to kind of move forward or grow in some way, and what are the things we need to cope with to do? And so it was, I think that's how you were framing it, Julia?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Are you going to mix them up this time?
I'm going to mix them up, and I would like to sort of just underscore something here, and it sort of comes from adult development theory, but also existential psychotherapy, and that is this idea of the context. You know, if you're coaching from the same context as the client, you know, how do you notice what context you're in? And what we often see is coaches who kind of tuning in and dropping out, and sort of trying to be in a different context outside their work as a kind of a survival mechanism. And I just want to sort of alert us to that. Krista, it's made your eyebrows come together. Was I talking nonsense?
No, I just wondered if you can just illustrate.
Yeah.
Something there I didn't catch.
Okay, so what I'm finding in maybe it's just our network and my network is there's a lot of post-conventional people who are working as coaches and coaching into a very conventional system. And I'm wondering if that helps them survive better or get better insights in the conventional system, if that's a survival technique. I don't know, I'm just throwing it in the pot, because a lot of those coaches seem to they're starting to look a little bit disinterested in coaching into conventional environments. And I'm wondering what's happening and how people can retain their love and interest of the organizations that they coach into. If that makes any sense. I'm just fiddling here with groups. And then I will send everyone off. I'm actually going to redo the groups. Forgive me. Because, and were you okay? Yeah.
Well, you just do that and we'll entertain everybody somehow and do a little
Please,
song
tap
and
dance.
dance to take over the technical things. No, just that I know it's helpful to be able to focus on that and not try to
Thank you.
entertain the group while we're doing that. But I think the comments are, you know, those of us that are really immersed in this kind of developmental thinking are aware that we have this subject-object thing and what are we held by, and being intentional about that. Because I imagine as we mature and evolve, we also make diverse choices and or circumstances of life put us in diverse contexts that mean that we are held by or shaped by very different kind of environments. So for me, I have the background of growing up mostly in British Columbia and then coming to Norway for the last 15 years. And there's many things that I notice in common, but some things really starkly, you know, shocked me when I came here. But how do you come to appreciate or relate to the context in a more intentional way? So how are you doing there, Julia?
Perfect. It's all ready. And so off you all go. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you.
Do you mind if I move? Because now I see two of my students are in a room together.
Yes, go ahead and move. There was just one of, do that. I don't always recognize
I will.
Yeah.
There, I just switched her over there.
Good. There's somebody who's moving to South Africa that needed going in a South African context. Yeah. Thank you. You know, it's such a I mean, I think we got somewhere. It'd be nice to consolidate it.
Do you want to pause the recording?
Thank you.
Nice to see everybody whoosh back in. So my suggestion here is that take a deep breath. We've rudely interrupted your conversation now. And just take a moment to say, hey, what do I want to share from that? And just write it in the chat. What's 2 or 3 words that says, what would I want to share from our conversation? Just take a moment to reflect and put something in there. And that will let us kind of get a collective sense. And it may be about thriving, it may be about survival, or it may be about totally something different. Maybe that we'll see you later, Rebecca, that you need to leave.
Thanks
but
for
good
coming.
to see you here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you.
People are either very thoughtful or very shy.
Yeah.
Very reflective. My intention here is simply to give us a more of a collective sense of a broader thing before we jump into who's the extroverted enough to speak first and how does that prime the conversation. Okay, we got some coming. I can supply you with stuff, yo, about the Enneagram. And I know Julia can supply much more. Alistair has a question. Christo heard something. What else do we have coming in here? Oh, Jonathan, I got to ask you to say something about collusion to get us started here. Colluding with the values you don't share.
So one member of our group was talking about being part of an organization where it felt like they weren't really talking and thinking about people. It was about the bottom line and what it felt like to be part of that system. And I escaped a big institution to become a therapist and a coach, and realized I could work on the outside. But it did make me think about, I mean, I'm not quite as cynical as that. I think I do work with people who care about people, at least some of the time. But there is the risk of, are we supporting something that is broken? And even though we're on the outside, we're colluding with that system by helping them to be better at working inside a broken system that isn't going to become unbroken.
Yeah. And I see Jamie's comment there about organizations asking too much of people, creating unhealthy environment, not allowing people to speak up, not psychological safety. Do you have more to say about that, Jamie?
I think it pretty much it encapsulates everything that I hear from my clients. You know, they show up to work very skilled and eager to contribute, and over time are beaten down by excessive expectations. And I'm hearing some feedback. Does everyone else hear that?
I did.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just a kind of a toxic environment now in organizations, and even the ones that espouse well-being and self-care and all of this stuff have the same expectations. They're just papered over with language that makes people think they've addressed that issue, but the expectations remain. And that's a lot of pressure for individuals in that organization. And so that's what I mean.
Yeah, no kidding. So, and I think, Notemba, your comment follows on that in some ways, because I can imagine if that trend continued, something's going to break down. Something's going to deconstruct. Can you say more about this process? Do you see a more advanced stage of it?
Okay, and Jambo, you can maybe step in here. Yeah, no, we were talking about the many transitions that comes with things breaking down and collapsing, and the anxiety and the uncertainty that comes with being in multiple transitions, but also in terms of how do we then hold ourselves you know, with all of those changes, and maybe with the possibility that something new and necessary could emerge from all of that. Yeah. So we're talking about motherhood, we are talking about COVID, we are talking about politics, we are talking about all the systems that seem to be really collapsing around us.
Well, and the thing that I wonder about and mention sometimes in different contexts when I'm able to is, what is the opportunity you have as a coach or a leader to direct people's attention within all of that? Kind of where and how do you help the, you know, if people are going to reframe because things are breaking down, and that came up earlier, relanguaging things. What is the possibility you have as a coach in that space? I mean, we'll just throw that out and see whoever wants to answer or contribute or question.
I'd love to, oh, Sam, go ahead.
I think you can only offer the coachee the possibility of, I think, to connect to what Jamie was talking about. Then they have to renegotiate for themselves in the context of the organization and the politics that are going on in the organization. You know, how do you participate? How do you negotiate identity within the organization? You know, one of the conversations I have with my coachees is like, we can have this coaching conversation. In the end, you're going to have to then establish the context, because I'm not in the organization with you every day. You are. I come for an hour, we talk. Here are the ideas. What do you want to do about it? And I think there's for all of our clients, I think there's a lot of ongoing negotiation and participation. I do find the words authenticity sort of like not very productive, because actually if somebody's in a meeting and decides to be silent, they're actually being authentic. Why? Because they're negotiating what's going on in that meeting at that moment. And to them, the most authentic thing at that moment is, I want to keep my job. I need to pay my mortgage. I'm going to shut up right now. That's authentic. I mean, that is authenticity. I mean, and I think we confuse clients when we talk about authenticity. Authenticity shows up in many, many ways. So that's what I would offer.
Great. Julia, you were going to say something.
Well, I suppose I'm sitting with a funny thing going on, since I had a very interesting conversation for somebody who worked with a lot of military people. And so, you know, to your question, like where do we direct clients' attention? And a lot of coaches, including me, have the habit of directing clients' attention to feelings as a way to create a pathway. And then, you know, what if your clients didn't want to feel? And in fact, not feeling was a requirement for their survival. What tools do we have? You know, to build a pathway. And then we were having a conversation earlier about, and maybe Daniel, Jonathan, you want to talk about it. You know, like what happens when feelings are dangerous to jobs?
Yeah, and I think this goes to Daniel, what you'd said about I can't remember the exact word, but it's kind of, what are our proclivities as coaches? Do we want to take people to the feeling state because that's something we function well in, but that's maybe not what they need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jonathan, I would be curious to hear, if I may ask you a question about that. What do you mean with they don't need feelings? So how do you see that? Because I would oppose that, just to make clear that this is from a critical listening to you. Mm-hmm.
So what I would improvise is to say, when I hear Julia say, sometimes it's not safe for the client, they don't feel safe enough to express or talk about something, then how am I kind of respecting their boundaries, and not to purely intellectualize and kind of get from the neck up with them, but to help them find a language that's safe enough for them to talk about their experience, that to Sam's point is authentic for them, so that they feel they open up. And what I can imagine then is they would have their feelings get expressed and come into things indirectly, that it would seep in because it's always present. You can never disconnect it.
So you're actually saying that it is, it is only natural to include the feelings. It's because you were stating,
Well, but they may not be naturally ready to have the language or access. If they use certain words and it triggers certain feelings that may overwhelm them or scare them too much, how do you help them regulate for themselves their ability to access their own experience?
Yeah, and why I responded, because that's the domain that's my specialty that I work in, and yes, the safety, right? It's to not feel is always a defense mechanism, right? We've learned to, and I often work with clients or when I teach, like what emotion wasn't welcome when you grew up, what emotion was felt as threatening, or often because our parents weren't able to be with that certain emotion. Right, often anger and sadness come up in that space.
Yep, been there.
But I would, in general, as a coach, I would say it all depends on what the client wants to work on, right? I'm not setting on the outset, this is what we're working on. It's not my agenda, but I feel related to the longing of the client. I mean, I would say you can go past like what's going on the inside, and really holding space to be in that, to relearn to feel safe with emotions that are harder to be with is really a lot of the work. Yeah.
Well, and then that would be a response to my question about how and where do you direct their attention?
Yeah. How, do you want me to answer that, or was it?
I'm not sure. I think Julia needs to interrupt us because we're at the top of the hour.
We're at the top of the hour, and what I'm noticing is that we haven't really dug so deeply into how we need to be with clients in this world. And in that true kind of helper fashion, we've been much more focused on the client in the conversation. And I'm hoping that you did find some value in that, in your small groups. And I love to end on time, so I would love to suggest that Jonathan and Daniel put their emails into the chat box. So if anyone doesn't know you and wants to get hold of you, at least they know where to find you. That would be great. And to say thank you so much for bringing your enormous brains to this group and helping us learn more about what's happening within us and our clients. And thank you everyone for attending. This is our last kind of supervision session for the year at Aephoria. And so I want to wish you happy holidays or not holidays, depending on how your world unrolls. And so thank you very much. Jonathan and Daniel, want to say a quick word?
Yeah, thanks. I actually found today very insightful. I really enjoyed the time spending here, and have a good Christmas.
And again, thanks for the invitation and the opening of the community to us bringing people in, and the small group breakout we had conversations, which was very enriching and enlivening. So I hope it was as enriching for everybody in their breakouts today.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, lovely. Yeah, thank you guys so very much. Alistair's still hoping his question's going to get answered. Yeah.
Cheers, Alistair. All right.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I hope they found it interesting and useful. And thank you guys for the brilliant facilitation and conversation.
It's just
So happy.
improvisation.
Yeah.
And improv. Yeah.
It's nice,
Cool.
nice meeting you, Jonathan.
You too, Daniel. I got a lot out of the conversation today.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I'm sure we'll connect again sometime.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
Good,
See you guys
Julia.
later.
Take care.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
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 Bye.